All right. Well, once again, welcome. My name is Allie Michael. I'm the coordinator for academic services and engagement. I've met many of you, but some of you I haven't. So if I haven't, nice to meet you virtually. So this is the first of our AP Academy Professional Development Series. We're really happy that y'all are here for our first session. We will have these about every other week on Fridays. There may be a week or two where we'll be off by that based on our speaker availability, but we'll have these Fridays at 11. And we will record all of these and post them to our website after the fact. So if you do miss it, or if you want to go back and watch something again, we'll have those all available on our website, as well as any resources that we share or handouts or anything like that during the meeting itself. So today we are focusing on innovative teaching. And we have an amazing faculty panel here with us today that's going to talk about innovative teaching with us. So I just want to let our panelists take just a few minutes to introduce yourselves. If you will, tell us your name and the department you teach in. Let us know how long you've been at Austin Peay. And also what type of modality you typically teach in, whether it be online, on ground, or hybrid. So Terry, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Hello, my name is Terry Clark. I just eloped, so I was Terry Higdon, if you knew me as Higdon, so just now doing all the name change stuff, but I'm happy to be here. I'm going into my third year at Austin Peay, and I had 10 years in at Hopkinsville Community College, so I taught in the associate's degree nursing program, and so now I teach people that are already nurses in the RN to BSN program, and they're just getting their bachelor's. So I was one of the lucky ones. Our program was already completely online, and so it hasn't been that hard of a switch for me. So I feel fortunate in that regard as far as COVID. But I did some teaching before that in just like a technical program. So I have been teaching for a little while, but I think I answered all the questions, didn't I?
You did. You're good.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so let's go to Dr. McConnell now.
Hi, my name is John McConnell, and I'm in the Department of Educational Specialties. I typically teach courses in research methods and statistics. I've been at APSU for 6 years now. Absolutely love it here. This is the best job I've ever had. I think it'll be the same for you. Most of my courses are face-to-face or hybrid, and every now and then online. So it was a big transition for me to teach some of my courses that are typically face-to-face online.
Great. All right, Dr. Dunkel.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kalina Dunkel. I'm in the Department of Geosciences and also the Associate Dean for the College of STEM. And let's see, this is my 9th year here now. So I think I still think of myself as new, but I probably passed the point of really being new anymore. I typically teach pretty much almost all on ground, a little bit of hybrid. So spring was definitely a challenge for me. I have also, one of my courses I've completely flipped. So I put all of my lectures and things online and just do hands-on things in class, which that was the one I had last spring. So that had some extra challenges there as well. Prior to being in Austin Peay, I was in graduate school and had the opportunity to teach about 6 or 7 different lab courses there. So yeah.
And Dr. Thayer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Thayer. I'm in the Accounting, Finance, and Economics department over in the College of Business. I'm in accounting, so I teach the principles of accounting courses, and then I'm the sole tax professor over there. So I teach all the tax classes, and I also am the faculty person. I developed the VITA program. So if you've heard about getting your taxes prepared free on campus for students, staff, faculty, and the community, that's our program, and I love it. Austin Peay, I've been here, this is my 5th year here, but it holds a special place. I'm actually a graduate of Austin, my undergrad's from Austin Peay. And I agree with John, it is the best job I've ever had. I worked in industry before I came here. I worked for a CPA firm in the tax department as a supervisor there. And I liked that job, I enjoyed what I did, but after my first day in a classroom, I know I'm where I'm supposed to be. This is my passion, and it's absolutely true that I've never had a day I regretted going to work. I don't even consider it work. I enjoy it so much. For me, I apologize. My dog sees another dog and he's getting crazy. Hush, hush. I had never taught online until spring. So spring was a fun challenge for me. I know my skill set is in the classroom because I'm just a joyful personality. You can probably see the screen. So I feed off the energy of other individuals. So going online was a very big challenge just because it's not what I'm used to. But I got through spring semester, and then I spent summer building because I opted to be online this fall just for safety purposes. I was anxious about the COVID. And so I went and took a Quality Matters course and built my course that way. And I think it's going really well. I chose to do virtual online with the live classes. So my students actually attend Zoom during their scheduled class time. So that helps me have that interaction. And I'm enjoying it. It's obviously not the same, and I'm a hugger and I miss hugs so much. But I think that it's absolutely the best place to work and the best job, and we'll all get through it. And one day I'll be back on campus. So, and thank you for having me, Allie.
Oh, you're welcome. Let me tell y'all, if it's possible to make taxes sound fun and exciting, Dr. Thayer can do it. So she's made me want to go out and do taxes just by talking with her. So, all right. And Dr. Carter from Agriculture, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I was super excited about the panel, and now I'm nervous because everybody has so much experience. I'm an actual newbie. I'm Tiffany Carter in the Department of Agriculture, as you mentioned. This is my second year at Austin Peay. I don't have too much experience prior to that, a little bit as a graduate student, but I just got my PhD in May of last year. So I graduated, walked across the stage, and then moved here to Clarksville. So I taught a few classes as a teaching assistant, as a graduate student, but yeah, this is my second year. I mostly teach on-ground classes. It's hard to teach soils online, but this semester I'm figuring out how to make it work. And so we're doing some hybrid classes and a little bit of online class.
All right, wonderful. And we have one more panelist who is just getting out of class. So he'll join us as soon as he is able. That's Talon Beason. So once we see him pop up in the participants list, we'll let him introduce himself. So let's get started with talking about some questions just to kind of start us off today. So would you all please share with us some successful techniques that you've used to engage students in your classes? And these can be in-person techniques or virtual techniques. So I'm going to call on somebody to start. So Dr. McConnell, would you like to start?
Sure. I'll talk a little bit real briefly about my experience for the summer. Last year I was tasked with teaching EDUC 8003, which is a team building course. And so I was really excited because I was thinking, I'm going to be able to do all these things off campus and get the students together and learn about team building. But then of course in March, the pandemic hit. And so they said all summer courses have to be online. And so I thought, okay, now what am I going to do here with this team building course? I had initially planned an introductory activity where we would all go and participate in an escape game here in Clarksville. And I think it's really important to have, at the beginning of any sort of class, a common shared experience where students can kind of get to know each other, build a little bit of community, especially in an online course. And so I thought, you know what am I going to do? Let's make a virtual escape game. So I created a virtual escape game. I used a lot of humor. I think Allie has the link that she'll share on the screen. There it is. They had just taken my stats class, so the escape game was Escape from Dr. McConnell's stats class, which they all really could relate to. They were excited to do this, a little too excited. But I was a little nervous at how it would be received, and it ended up being a big hit with the students. They really liked it. I set it up just like a real escape game where you had 1 hour and you had to complete it. They were allowed 3 hints, and they operated in teams of 2 to 3 people. They had to use props that I knew that they would have, like the textbook. It was entirely done in Google Forms. So if you look at that, you can see it's just a long Google form. And you're welcome, if you get the link, you're welcome to go through the game if you want and just make up answers. Perfectly fine, just to see how I set it up. But it was done entirely in Google Forms. I think the keys to making this successful was that I had really small groups so that no one really got lost in the activity. It was also a way for them to introduce themselves to each other. So I know students are getting a little tired of, you know, the discussion forum where you have to go on there and introduce yourself, and it just seems a little artificial. This was a way for them to introduce themselves in a more authentic way because they had to get through this activity. I think another key aspect to it, especially in summer, was that it was asynchronous. So a lot of my students are working during the day, and this was something that they could schedule on their own time and complete apart from the scheduled time for the class. And I think they really like that. But there it is. Welcome to answer any questions about it. I don't think it has to be an escape game, but I think having some sort of shared experience at the beginning of the class where they can, and it doesn't even have to be academic. It doesn't have to be related to the content, but if it could be, that's great. But it's a way for the students to kind of get to know each other and then hopefully rely on each other for the remainder of the semester.
Great. Any questions for Dr. McConnell about getting that set up? And feel free also to post any questions in the chat, and we'll be monitoring those throughout the meeting. All right, well, who wants to go next? Anyone want to wave their hand? Who has another technique? Dr. Thayer.
First, I'd like to say, John, that's really cool. And I love that idea. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. I've never actually done an escape room. I've always been anxious about the idea of being like trapped in a spot. But this is a neat way to maybe introduce myself to one, right? So I think that's really cool. I was going to say the same thing. For me, one of the big things is making clear my students realize I'm relatable to them. So we spend our first class period when we're on ground, we do a kind of introduction of each other, but I always ask them to write on a paper. I give them a note card, you know, something interesting or funny about them. One, it's also a technique for me to remember their names because 10 years, well, actually I had students from 5 years ago that I may not remember their name, but I can always remember their interesting fact. And I'll run into them and be like, you had a horse named Trixie. What was your name again? And they love that, you know. But I have found for me, making clear to students that I am relatable and a person and want to genuinely know them makes a huge difference in them being ready to come to me when they're struggling versus feeling that I'm unapproachable. So when we do our interesting fact game, I try to, when they give me the interesting facts, I tell them, and please don't say anything that you would never want anybody to know because I'm going to read these aloud. We read them aloud, I read them aloud, and we get a good laugh and we tell the stories, and I try to relate something in my life to that. So by the end of the class, not only do they now know something about each individual member and maybe feel because especially my principal's classes, these are students who have not met usually. This is the first class they're going to have together. They now have some camaraderie, but then they also have just random interesting knowledge about me that makes them laugh. It is amazing to me how humor actually gets me a lot farther with my students than being stern. As a matter of fact, this past week I had a peer evaluation in my online class, and I had y'all may have had this and know about this, but apparently if you don't disable it and you're using like the whiteboard thing in Zoom, they can mess with you and like start drawing on your whiteboard. And I didn't know that. And students were randomly drawing on my whiteboard. And I was confused thinking, because I'm not a technology genius, that I was doing something wrong. And then it occurred to me that I was being messed with. So instead of just being like, no, you can't do this, I laughed about it. Was like, okay, I'm going to Google how to fix this and know who's doing this. And one of the comments I got on my peer evaluation is she thought that was a really great way to handle it. Instead of having them feel like they were getting empowered and being able to mess with me, they were able to be like, she took it in stride. So, and then I had a student email me after and say, don't read aloud because I don't want to be a snitch, but this is how you fix it. And so I really appreciated that. Here's this brand new student who's helping me to stop that from happening in class. But I agree that it's really important to have those activities that make them bond. Because once they have those relationships, I just think that they are able to be more vulnerable with each other when they're struggling. And that's how we help them be successful, is knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable and get the help. And I tell my students day one that there's no reason that every single person in here can't pass this course with a very good grade if you meet me where you need to be. So I will bend over backwards. I will hold the tutoring sessions. I will help you, but you give me your part. And they appreciate that. And that's what I've found, is that all the feedback I get from students is that we can tell from day one that you are happy to be in this room with us and you want us to be successful. And that to me means more than, you know, them all getting hundreds on an exam. But I really like John's idea, and I hope he doesn't mind, but I might borrow that for my spring classes, because in the spring I have much smaller groups of students, and think that would be a great way for us to get introduced. And that could be, this is what I love about these activities, these panels, is we learn from each other. So thank you for sharing that, John.
And Jennifer, I'll send you the actual Google form so you could edit it and use it as a template if you would like, and supply your own details. But yeah, I'll send that to whoever would like it.
Thank you, John. That would be very helpful, because like I said, I don't know how to do an escape room at all, but thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, our final panelist has joined us, Talon Beason. He's out of class now. So Talon, do you want to introduce yourself to us? We were already talking about some successful techniques to engage students in your classes, but just let us know who you are, where you're from.
Sure. Excellent. Yeah, my name is Talon Beason. I'm a professor of acting and directing in the Department of Theater and Dance. Tech is really, really important to our industry. I've said this in many classes, what I've found really interesting about this is that our industry was already heading this way before COVID happened. And there were a lot of people who were fighting it and saying, no, theater must be live, theater must be this, theater must be, it has to be these things. And then there was a very vocal group of people who were saying, no, it doesn't have to be those things. And they were winning, because most of the theater industry has moved to on-tape auditions, and you can audition for any job no matter where you are. So this forced embrace of tech was happening whether we liked it or not. And then COVID happened and everyone said, oh, wait, they were right. We do have to embrace this stuff. So it's, I don't know, for me, it's just really cool to have people around and to share these ideas and get it out there, because it's coming. Once this is done, this is happening and it's coming whether we want it to or not. So we might as well get on the train and do it now, because our students are going to have to go out into a world where it's expected that they know it, right? So like Jennifer and John were saying, I mean, let's make it fun. Let's make this entertaining for them, and just immediately from day one incorporate it into what they do and what they learn, so that as they get out there, they have to do it. I mean, I know for all of my classes last semester and this semester, tech is a given. I don't take time to train them to do tech. We do it on the fly, because it's a given that they need to know how to do this. And I start by making videos with my phone that are really goofy and silly, and I welcome them into my house and say, I did one for improv last semester where I wasn't on camera at all, but I had my daughter's Barbies, and her stuffed animals, and then I got a hat, and I had the hat and the Barbie and the stuffed animal, give them their instructions for the assignment, and I edited it all together with my iPhone and told them how to do it. Said, this is what's expected of you. You need to learn to do this because the world's doing it, you know? And I think the more, like John and Jennifer were saying, the more you can come down to them on, not come down, but come to them on their level of silliness and having a good time with life, instead of, I am a professor, revere me, I think the better off you are. I'm sure I can find that video somewhere. It's probably still archived on D2L.
Oh, I'm sure your students have saved that video.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, of course the danger with this is after my first year here, pictures of me and videos of me started showing up on Facebook. And I was like, well, you know, I put it out there, so.
Great. All right, well, let's hear from some other panelists. What are some other successful techniques that you've used to get your students engaged? Dr. Dunkel.
Sure. So I tend to do a lot of activities and things in class. I know I mentioned earlier that one of my classes I've completely flipped, and that is all we do is activities. But even those where I still lecture some, I try to keep it no more than like 10, 15 minutes at a time, and then we'll do something. And so similar to what some of the others have talked about, trying to build that community early. Normally I'll do kind of same thing, like note cards, tell me something interesting, or partner up with a classmate and then introduce that classmate to everybody else. And so that's been a little trickier as we've been a little more online lately. I'm still doing kind of hybrid, so I'm in person sometimes, but not all of my students are. And so I also this semester tried a goofy video approach. And so I made a video at home just introducing myself, and I started out actually playing a little bit of flute just to like demonstrate some of my hobbies, and then was talking about I said, you may hear me talk a bunch about my husband and my cat, and they're like, oh look, here they come. And so my husband walked in carrying the cat, and this was like take 3 or 4 at this point, and the cat was getting a little grouchy. I forgot to introduce my husband. I only introduced the cat once they walked in, and I just left it as that. I've had some funny comments from students about that. But, you know, doing those sorts of things. And then I actually, some of my friends over in the College of Education shared this technology called Flipgrid. And you can set it so that students just record like 90-second videos. And so I posted mine in there, and I said, everybody just record like introduce yourself to the class, you know, share something funny. We ended up with lots of cats and dogs and things in the videos. And so that's been really interesting this semester. And one of the group work types of things I do that I think could work really well, like I said, I'm kind of still doing the hybrid, but for those of you that are doing even the Zoom classes, there are what are called like Jigsaw Activities. And so that's where you split students into groups, and each group kind of gets a different area to work on. And so for example, in geosciences, I get one group and I say, all right, you all are going to learn all about earthquakes. And so here's your map of like earthquakes. And then I give another group, like, here's a map of volcanoes. And so they go through this exercise. And then I tell them, all right, you got to make sure you are the expert in volcanoes or the expert in earthquakes or whatever. And then I mix up the groups so that there's one expert from each of those into the next group. And so then they share and learn about all of the different pieces. And so a lot of times there's, you know, 3 or 4 different pieces that all kind of come together. I do similar sorts of things. I do a lot of like class semester long projects. And one of the things I've done with that is I pick the groups, and I purposefully pick the groups so that I get a mix of, you know, and I'll ask them day one, like, what are some of the other classes you've had? And I don't want everybody who's had physics to be in the same group, because I want to make sure that we're getting different expertise across. And then, you know, and I tell the students straight out, like, I am purposefully picking these groups so that everybody in your group has a piece that they can contribute and help. And I think that sometimes sometimes students get upset, like, oh, I don't want to be in a group with so-and-so or whatever. But it gets them to really know, like, oh, like, I'm important to this group, and I have something that can contribute. So that's, yeah, those are probably some of the big things, is just that group work side and activities.
Great, thank you. Okay, what are some other successful techniques Terry, you look like you're poised.
Yeah, that's
to
fine. I
speak.
didn't want to jump on top of anyone. Well, I told Allie that I kind of just took it really basic. I'll kind of share some of more of my creative ideas later. But for me, whenever I went from on ground for 10 years to online, it was a little bit harder transition than I thought it would be. And so I don't know if you're like me, but in my effort to learn how to be a better online instructor, I just started researching everything and then just developed trainings for other teachers. So you know how it is, if you teach something, you learn it better. And so just to kind of get to the basics, if you're not used to teaching online, to me, I thought the target was a lot different than I thought it would be. And so just some basics of things that I've done to engage students that seems to be working. I get a really good response through emails. They'll just send me messages saying this was great and stuff. And, you know, that's not that common always for students to just randomly reach out and say this was awesome. So I feel like it works. And then, you know, my student evals and things seem to support that. So just simple things, like other panelists have mentioned, being human. I try to just really open that line of communication and share pictures of my family and pictures of, you know, when I got married or something like that. I also keep a list of when the students tell me important things, just a roster, just quick notes, like this one's pregnant, due in December, you know, this one just had surgery. And because especially when you're online, it's easy to forget that. To me, they sometimes all kind of run together. And I also advise these students, so their names are already familiar to me. So sometimes it's hard to remember. So I just keep a real quick roster and I just jot down simple little notes so that I can, and it seems like it really means a lot to them for you to kind of know them, especially when you're completely online. Just my system, I have a system in place of what I do each week. And to me, it helps. It may not help you, you know, doing videos with Barbie dolls sounds much more fun. So, but if you're more of this kind of, and I used to be a theater major, so that's very tempting to me. I switched to nursing, so I have that side too, but I may have to implement that in some of my nursing classes. I'm not sure it would be well received, but but all of our assignments are due on a certain day. So every, you know, I have a schedule of when I'm going to grade and I try to get it done. I try to get it done within about 3 days. I teach 8-week classes, so they need that feedback. To me, it's important to give them feedback before their next assignment is due, because otherwise, how do they know what they did right or wrong? And so I try to go in the classes 6 days a week at least. I might give myself a break every once in a while, but just popping in real quick. Are there any questions? I check, you know, just make sure, because like others have mentioned, a lot of these students are working students. They may only have a 4-hour time period, one, you know, day to work on something. And so I try to be available as often as I can. Of course, doing self-care too, but having that schedule, I try to open up the week, you know, with some kind of comment or announcement or something. And then we do still use discussion boards. I know, you know, I try to change things up, but I try to respond to a certain percentage of students every week. And you can go in under your name and see if you click progress in D2L, and it'll show you how many you've responded to that week, because I forget, it all runs together. So, you know, I have a goal of responding to at least 30% of my students. So I'll go in each week and just make sure, okay, did I at least do that? And I try to change it up and things. So those are some different ways that I have just tried to respond. And then when I do respond to them, I try to close it with a question, like, did that make sense? Did that answer your question? So it continues the conversation versus just not knowing if they ever even read it or whatever. And then my last thing is, I'll say, I don't know if any of you got to sit through the pre-semester training, but the one on the Pedagogy of Care, I loved it. This is how I teach. And it was really affirming to me, because in nursing, history has been that you're supposed to be a little bit more mean and scare them, and you know, you're going to kill people. But I'm teaching people that are already nurses. So I would highly recommend, if you go to apsu.edu and just search Pedagogy of Care, they did a wonderful webinar, and it has just, you know, their different tips for faculty all lined out, and I loved everything they had to say. So that's my 2 cents.
Wonderful. And I see, I want to get to Dr. Carter as well. I see Dr. Thayer has her hand raised. Did you have something to add to that, Dr. Thayer?
Well, actually, I have a question. What you said, because I know I'm supposed to be like a panelist, but I'm learning too. So How did you say about checking that progress? Because I try to comment on those too.
Well, for my own progress, you can check your own progress. So
Yeah,
if
that's
you
what I'm
go,
saying.
yeah, if you click on your name, it says view progress.
Oh,
Top right, do you see that? Yeah,
yeah.
and then it'll show you like how many posts you've made and things like that. So mine are broken up into modules. So it'll show me each module, how many announcements I've made, how many initial posts I've made and responses. And so I just try to, like I said, it's not a ton. 30% is only, you know, not that much, but you know, more is better, but you don't want to just respond to one person or something.
Right.
And then, you know, different people you may not have discussion boards, but that's just one way that I try to check myself.
I just didn't realize I could do that. I knew how to check all my students' progress. I didn't realize we can see to make sure we're staying on track. So thank you. And I was afraid I'd forget that question if I didn't ask now. Thanks, Sally.
You're welcome. So Dr. Carter, let's hear from you. Some successful techniques that you've used for engaging students, whether it be in person or online.
So it's a little bit easier in person. I will say that I agree with pretty much what everybody else said. The very first thing I do is humanize myself, just so they know that I'm not scary. I mean, I don't think I look intimidating, but sometimes they think so. But I say the same thing. I have my students introduce themselves, and I always give them a fun fact about me. And so I use the same fun fact all the time. We talk about my 200 pairs of tennis shoes, and my sneaker collection and my kids' sneaker collection. And so students are always interested in that. And so then they're always checking to see what shoes I'm wearing each day. And so that helps them approach me, not just in the classroom, but when they may see me around campus or even just around town. It also helps to kind of set the tone that I'm going to be using personal stories and personal information during my teaching. But while I'm on campus, typically I walk around the room while I'm talking. I don't ever stay up at the front. And so walking between the aisles helps them engage as well. But yeah, I think everybody else kind of hit the nail on the head to start out humanizing yourself, and it makes things a little bit easier for the students.
Yeah, that's all really great. Yeah, Talon.
Something I just wanted to share this, something that I found that's been really effective is the gamification of education. A friend of mine is a video game scholar and world builder. And he kind of taught this to me, this idea that if you make everything like a video game, kids are more inclined to participate. And the way to do that is really, really simple. You don't have to change anything. Just send out emails to a group of people that completed an assignment, basically telling them they've leveled up or they've achievement unlocked or something like, I mean, it doesn't have, you don't have to use those words, but it's this small little idea of the rat hitting the feeder bar and getting that endorphin rush of, oh, I did a thing. And I mean, it's exactly how video games work. And, you know, and as AR and things like that are becoming more everywhere, we can do the same thing in our classrooms by not changing anything, just taking a second to shoot out an email, letting them know that they've unlocked the sword of power or whatever thing you're having them do. So that was it. That's what I said.
I'm one of Dr. McConnell's students. Dr. McConnell, I would like to receive the sword of power.
I was just going to mention, because when Terry was saying something about timely feedback, so that was my biggest struggle going online. Now, obviously, I'm in a program, accounting is calculations and numbers. It's not just reading you wrote a paragraph about something. It's actually grading and seeing if you're able to follow the formulas and processes and be in balance and things like that. So I struggled with, in class, it's very easy to do that, give timely feedback. I can collect your papers, I can immediately go through them. Online, it's a lot more difficult if they are writing out all their problems, taking pictures, uploading them to a Dropbox, and then I'm trying to be like, what did y'all do there? So what I created was, I called them homework quizzes. And this is a quick check for me to see if they're actually doing the problems correctly. And I know it might not translate good for like acting and directing and theater, but for people who have like those more quant classes, what I do is, if they have, say, problems 1 through 5 to do for homework, I go create just a quick quiz in D2L that's on problem 1, part 2, section C, what was your net income? And that's a spot check for, did they do that problem correctly? And these are timed quizzes because, as much as I hate to say it, we know students are like, oh, I'll just wait till I see what the questions are. No, because these problems take time. So they only get 20 minutes. So I express very clearly, you have to have written these problems out before you try to take this quiz. And as soon as the quiz is completed and hit submitted, it unlocks my handwritten solutions to the problems for them. So if they didn't know how to do it, or they did get it wrong, they immediately have the feedback to go correct their own notes. But it started giving them the timely feedback. Otherwise, I just can't keep up. I tend to have principals classes that can range from 30 to 60 students, and I just can't online grade images of accounting problems. So that was just for those that are struggling, because I did really difficult in the spring, struggle with timely feedback. That was a quick and easy way. I mean, it was a little time consuming setting up the quizzes, but it was a quick and easy way to provide them that feedback they needed, especially since this discipline is one, if you don't master the first part, you can't do the next chapter. So they needed that. So that's just a suggestion for people.
Great. How about, we've mentioned several different tech resources, different technological resources. We've had Flipgrid mentioned. We have just iPhone videos with Barbie dolls mentioned. What are some other tech tools that you all have used that you have found to be helpful?
I'll jump in, Allie, since I didn't really share that first. This one's very simple, but just the audio. So whenever I'm grading, of course, now D2L, of course, I do a lot of papers and things. You can actually do the annotations within D2L now. That's a pretty new feature. So just make sure you know that that is available to you. You don't have to, I used to have to download it and comment and stuff. So now I can make the comments right there. But then I also just click a little quick 30-second audio. Hey, you did this right. Maybe you can improve on this. Maybe thinking about adding this. The students love it. They just absolutely love it. You wouldn't think it, and it doesn't really take that much time, but you know as well as I do that there's no tone in text or email or written word. And so if they're having a bad day or they're feeling bad about themselves, if I say, hey, you didn't get APA 7 right, they can read it however they want. But if I get on and I'm like, you might want to work on APA 7, and they can, at least the first week or two, I try to let them at least hear how I speak. I can't do the audio every week, but when I have a new group, I try to just, so they can kind of hear how I'm talking versus, you know, taking it in a bad way. You know, every time my 18-year-old daughter reads a text, she reads it with an attitude. I'm like, they might not have meant it that way. Like, you don't have to have an attitude behind it all. So it's been very well received. Of course, videos, pretty much everybody has mentioned that. And, you know, there's things you can do to just make those even, you know, a step above and a little bit more quality, just simple things like having a good mic, you know, having some lighting, not having the lighting coming from behind where you look like a, you know, some kind of monster, not having it up your nose, not having it at the ceiling fan, like just, you know, simple things that you can try to do to make it more enjoyable for the student. We have UJA now in D2L, and I would encourage you. It's not excellent, but it's one way to do it. And, you know, the quality is not as good as you might get with some other video quality, but I would just choose one, try to learn it. We have UJA within D2L. If you wanted to learn Camtasia, just simple things like your iPhone, you know, iMovie or anything like that. There's so many different ways. Just YouTube. I made some videos on how to do that. If you don't know how to do that, just how to upload YouTube videos. And so I would encourage you just to learn one way that you could, you know, do videos, and that can be fun. You know, I love doing the editing and all that, but you don't have to do that. But if you want to, you can. And then the last thing I would just say is make sure that you're learning. I started this thing in my old college. It was called PD squared. And then so it was Professional Development Payday. So on every payday, it reminded you needed to do some kind of professional development. And so that could just be a quick Zoom. I mean, sometimes I'll have a Zoom going on how to do something and I'm doing something else, but I might get one tip or something. And Distance Ed has tons of stuff. If you go in D2L, if you click on APSU and on the right, there's a calendar from Distance Ed, and they have, you know, Zoom tricks and UJA and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, it can be overwhelming because there's so many different tools, but I would encourage you just maybe, you know, once a month or something, pick one thing that you want to try to learn or improve upon and add it to your class. LinkedIn Learning has also got tons of videos, and you have access to that through APSU. And they have tons of videos too that you can kind of learn and keep up with. So I think that's it.
Great. And Terry, you do have a lot of really great videos. I know you've shared them with me before. Do you by chance have a link that you could drop in the chat box for us so people can access those?
I'd like all in one place. Probably not. I mean, I have in my dossier where I created. I mean, they're kind of in different places. I probably should put them in one place. There's some on the website. There's some in YouTube. There's some in UJA. But I guess I have my dossier page that would have a bunch. I'll look at it.
If there's a few that are easily accessible, just shoot them to me in an email, and I'll share them with everybody after this.
I mean, okay.
we won't judge. We just want the information.
Okay.
Okay. What are some other tech tips? Yeah, Talon.
I just wanted to echo that audio thing. I mean, it's so effective for just audio. We're kind of a consumerist society who is trained to hear commercials and to hear that sound of someone delivering us information. And it's just a very useful thing, and it helps with the tone. It also helps just with delivery information delivery, because we're all trained to hear it that way. So I don't know. I mean, I often think that if I'm sending out a little piece of audio to my students, I'm basically sending them a commercial for the full thing and trying to lure them in that way. So I just kind of wanted to echo that audio alone is a great way to engage people.
I just wanted to piggyback off what Terry and Talon are saying. I think one of the main things that's important to keep in mind in the online courses is to humanize the instructor. And so in addition to the audio and the video, one thing that I've learned to do in my statistics class, which isn't, I don't know why, not one of the more popular courses in the college, but one thing that I did about 2 or 3 years ago is I started inviting the students who beat the game, as Talon would maybe say it, beat the course, and not just the high scores, but the ones who struggled too, and how they got through the course. And I invite them on the very first day of class, and they're always excited to come. Of course, this is their own time, and they come and they talk to the incoming cohort of students. And it seems like the students who are there on the first day really receive that very well, because hopefully it sheds a light on what the course is going to be like, what I'm going to be like, and just kind of makes the tough subject of statistics a little bit more humanizing.
Yes, as someone that is in his stats class right now, that was incredibly helpful from a student perspective, because I'm not going to lie, I'm scared of stats, but that definitely helped make it seem more accessible.
A little less, right?
Yeah, a little less. I'm only mildly terrified now. So.
I was going to say, so we're talking about technology, and sometimes I just go back to the basics. One of the feedbacks I've always gotten from students is that I don't post, when I'm in class and we're doing problems, I don't post the solution already done. We do it step by step, because then they're forced. One, I can be like, so what's going to go here? And then pause and they respond, but they can actually follow it versus me posting the solution up there and just pointing as we go. So what I did this summer, and I'm going to switch my camera just for a second so you can see it, was I got creative and I installed a 4x8 foot whiteboard in my office at home. And so I go back to the basics of, we write the problems up there, and they then get that same, and I know that's not using fancy technology whatsoever, but it seems to fit them and work. So we just use that basic thing because they need to follow it step by step. And I'm really proud of my 4x8 whiteboard. I love it. Plus I homeschool my children, so we use it there too. So it's helpful.
Nice. How about, Dr. Dunkel?
So from another technology side of thing that I tend to use, especially when I teach, so when I teach our introductory level physical or historical geology classes, I may have anywhere between 50 or 100 students in there. And so the engagement starts to become a little bit more of a challenge at times. And so I tend to use different types of polling things. And so even if you're running a Zoom class, right, there's that option to like ask them questions along the way. And so first day, I tell them, I'm like, we're going to have a mix of questions that we're all going to respond to. And so I said, some of them are just going to be survey. Like, I just want to know what you think about X topic, or like, there's not a right answer here. And so the first day it's like, why are you taking the class? And so I've got everything from, you know, I was required to take this, to I thought it'd be the easiest science, or like, I thought it would, I waited too long to register and now I'm stuck in this 8 o'clock class because that was all the fit, right? And so I kind of give them like some goofy choices. But then I also will do like review type questions. So after we've talked about a topic, to kind of gauge where the class is at. And sometimes it'll be like, okay, well, 80% of you have the incorrect answer. So let's go back and talk about this some more and rethink. And so it's a good way to see where things are at. And depending on what your goal is, there are different things available. From a more gaming aspect, there's one called Kahoot, which students, that actually like gives them their scores and things. If you want to use it more on the other end of like trying to also track attendance or give actual quizzes in class, things like the eye clickers can work. The downside with that is there is a bit of a cost for students, although I know we have some at the library that students can check out for free for a semester and things. So lots of different options, but it can be a good thing, especially if you've got larger classes, to try to get everybody engaged with some sort of polling.
Oh, that's really good. Dr. Carter, do you have any tech tips to share from the world of agriculture?
So actually, Dr. Dunkel said mine. I don't overdo it on the tech because I find that I don't necessarily need to. I'm able to engage my students and keep them involved even in just my PowerPoints. But anytime we're reviewing for an exam, we use Kahoot. I pretty much host it like a game show. And so the students think it's hilarious. They all log in using their smart devices or sometimes on their laptops. And we just see who wins. And usually there's some sort of prize or some sort of carrot for the top 3 or whoever wins. But yeah, we just host it like a game show. And I post it online. They're public. And so they can go home and play it again outside of the classroom to continue to practice for the exam. And they absolutely love it.
That's really great. Yeah, I know I've used Kahoot many times. We used it in everything from a big presentation with hundreds of people in a classroom setting as well. So it's a really great tool if you're not familiar with it. And I put the name in the chat box because it's spelled with a K. So if you're searching for it online, if you're unfamiliar with it, it's Kahoot. And I also see that Dr. Gonzalez shared here about dry erase paint used in rooms. Do you want to share a little bit more with us about that? I'm putting you on the spot, sorry. Oh, you're muted, if you can.
All right. Yeah, I never heard of dry erase paint, and I used to see a lot folks using like chalkboard paint, but then with allergies and everything, folks, I guess they invented this dry erase paint. I've seen it used in classrooms where folks couldn't afford necessarily to have Jennifer has a huge, which is pretty awesome, dry erase wall. And so the paint comes in clear or in white. And so you don't have to lose the credibility of your painted wall. You just kind of paint over it. But then also like in hallways and things where you may want like students to come and like share ideas or whatever in a larger space. It's not necessarily like high tech, but it's a nice like mid-range tech, not necessarily low tech. So I always like to play around with like high tech, low tech with my students, because my students are all here to become teachers. And so letting them understand that using technology doesn't mean like computers and apps all the time. It could mean, this low tech or somewhere in between kind of technology. So that was just something I wanted to share. I don't know, like the prices kind of range with that kind of paint, and there's all kinds of different brands to kind of shop around, but there are some locally that they sell that stuff too. So
Awesome. That's a really, I didn't know that that existed. I might have to get that for my house.
Also, just because whiteboards, he's not wrong, they're really expensive. It's actually a sheet of Formica. You get it at Lowe's. It was like $60 something. That's it for a 4x8 sheet. So it's actually just white Formica, because when I looked at the price of that big of a board, I was like, no, I'm a little too cheap for that. And it's thinner than the board, so it fit on my wall better. But I did not know, if I had known about the paint, there's a chance my whole home office would have that paint on it, and I would have the walls all able to be written on.
I saw a teacher using her shower.
Mhm.
Hey, we got to be resourceful, right? Teachers are good at that. Dr. Carter, it looks like Dr. Thayer had a question for you in the chat about how do you make it where you can access the Kahoot later for your students to review it? Is there a setting that you can do for that?
Yeah, there's a setting. I just replied to her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so as long as they have my username, they can go back and look at the Kahoot at any time.
Okay.
And then I gave her my email. If for some reason her or anybody else can't find it, I'll send you some more detailed information.
Awesome. Yeah, Talon.
I mean, we're all throwing out all these cool platforms, which are great. But I think something that I discovered last semester that I had never really thought about was letting the students show us more and kind of use the platforms that they are comfortable with, even if it's not an application we thought of. So like in my directing class last semester, when we had to go online, obviously they can't direct real actors. So I gave them assignments and said, what you need to do is set up the scene and play it out for me using whatever you want and voiceover. And several of them, and it kind of shocked me and blew my mind, used The Sims. And they set up their directing scenes in the Sims world and had the Sims play them out, and then just did voiceover. And it was not tech that I would have thought to use that way. But because I gave them the option, like, you do whatever you want. Here's your assignment. Here's what I need to see from you. They introduced me to new ways of using other applications. So yeah, I mean, I guess the point is just like, be open to what they know and what they're willing to throw out.
That's a really great note, Talon. And also kind of a good segue for me, because I want to open it up to our participants. Because like several people have said, we're learning from each other in all of this. None of us are experts. So let's share with each other. So does anybody else, any of our participants, have anything to share with us? Any tips or strategies or tech tools or anything that you found to be successful?
I had a quick question. With the different kinds of competition that we have in class, have we ever seen it work negatively?
No, at least not for me. It's always positive, never negative. You know, never. It always becomes everybody seems to enjoy it. I've never had any arguments. It always builds camaraderie. And then the next time we're playing the game, you know, they want to beat whoever won last time. So I've never had an issue.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Sorry, I've only had a negative experience once. A couple of years ago, I did something called the Thayer Bucks, where to encourage participation, they could get I created these little dollars and printed them on colored paper, and they could earn those, and they could then use those to apply for bonus points on certain activities like assessments later on. And I had one incident where a student basically was always responding, and another student was like, could you give us somebody else a chance? They were just getting mad because they couldn't get in. And so the way I handled it was I recognized, okay, we need to limit it. So I just started putting limits on how many times you could respond or something in the class, or if nobody else was willing to respond, you could have still respond again, but to make sure. But that was the only negative. For the most part, the students love competition. I think it actually builds camaraderie. And it's not something I do the very first day, so I think that helps. They've had some time to get to know each other and realize that this is all fun and games, and it's way better than me just standing there talking to them. And so at least this way they're getting to be engaged. But I did have one negative day where somebody like snapped on another person over some Thayer bucks.
Yeah, and I was gonna say I use silly prizes like mineral and rock stickers and things, and so they're excited to compete, but not to the point where like they're gonna argue over it that much. And so just goofy, like cheap prizes like that, or like one extra bonus point on an exam or something that's not, it builds some competitiveness without getting, so I've never, similar to Dr. Carter, I've never had that issue of anyone getting upset. I actually do the big class project I was talking about is a competition where every team is an environmental consulting firm. And so they're trying to get the bid from the city of like them being the firm that gets hired. And so my city, I invite alumni, like introductory geology students, faculty, like whoever wants to come. And last spring, we had to do it on Zoom, which actually ended up working out really well. And so then at the end, the audience votes for which firm they would hire. And so the winning team, I have pencils that say like hydrogeology rock star and things on them, and like that's what they get. So it's a fun thing, but it builds some competition without them getting upset. So.
If you guys don't mind, I do want to share one other thing that I think is really important in teaching, that I really appreciated as a student, since I've kind of just made that transition recently. I find that sometimes when I'm talking about soil, I'm so excited and I can just talk and talk and talk and go on forever. But I found that my students learn best when I take a break and realize that this isn't the Tiffany show. And there are other people that may be able to present good topics. And so sometimes I'll use YouTube videos, or maybe I'll call a friend that's a professor at another university and have them do a guest lecture or a virtual guest lecture, just to kind of break it up so it's not just me. And I think that helps to keep the students engaged, give them exposure to other people that have a different perspective. And so I think that's really, really helpful. Also, using a lot of open source materials. I'm trying to move away from using textbooks. And so me and my big ideas, I agreed to work with a professor at another university on writing an open source textbook for soils. So it's taking up too much of my time, but hopefully the result will be that, students can save money, use those open source resources, and professors will be able to use them as well. And so that'll kind of mix things up. And it's not just, me presenting the PowerPoints every single day.
Those are some really fabulous notes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I would love to talk to you about soil. That sounds like a very interesting conversation to have. I need to expand my soil knowledge. So, well, we are almost out of time, and I want to make sure I respect everybody's time today. So thank you so much to our amazing panelists for joining us today and sharing some ideas with us. Thank you for our participants for joining us. We really appreciate it, especially right before a holiday weekend. That's great. I hope that this was helpful for you. If you have ideas for future AP Academy Professional Development Series sessions, if you have something that you think would be really great to share with our community and you'd like to propose an idea, please email it to me. My email address, I'll drop it right here in the chat. It's just Michael A, it looks like Michaela, at apsu.edu. Please feel free to send me any ideas that you have. And yes, Dr. Gonzalez, I do have a list on our website. So it's apsu.edu/ASE, and that has a list of all of our upcoming professional development sessions. We also, Rachel Carroll from our office just sent out our monthly newsletter this morning that went to all of our adjunct, part-time, and temporary instructors. So you should have that in your email box as well. And that has a link to all of those upcoming sessions on that. So I hope that you'll participate in those. If you're not able to, like I said before, we're recording all of these and we'll post them on our website, so you can always go back and check. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for the day, but thank you all so much for attending and for sharing your knowledge. And I hope that this was helpful for everybody. I know it was helpful for me. So hope everybody has a wonderful weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Allie.
Bye.
Thank you. This is great because I didn't actually know some of these other faculty you asked to be panelists. And now, like, I feel like I found my kindred spirits in other disciplines, right? Because I just don't venture out of the College of Business often. So it was so nice to meet everyone, even virtually. And thank you for the great ideas. And I hope to actually see y'all in person next year.
Yes, that is our goal.
Bye, y'all. Have a great weekend.
Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.